Welcome to the Content Champion podcast. We provide the training and tools to help you become a content marketing champion in your online business. Introducing your host, the content champion himself, Loz James.
Hi guys, welcome to the Content Champion podcast. Thanks for listening. On the show this time, we're discussing the ingenious SEO Spiders Web content strategy with its creator and founder of blogger Sidekick, Will Blunt. A highly experienced entrepreneur, SEO and content marketing professional, Will's mission is to help companies grow their online influence by creating one-of-a-kind content, finding people to consume that content, then nurturing those people into becoming customers. Now, to go with this show, I've got a very special PDF checklist you can download that takes you through all the steps you need to take to set up your own SEO Spiders Web, presented as highly actionable bullet points that you can print off and check off as you complete each stage. To get instant access to this unique resource, visit contentchampion.com/SEO Spider. Now, I couldn't wait to get started with this call, so let's dive in. Thanks for coming on, Will.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Loz. Really excited to be here.
Now, before we deep dive into the SEO Spiders Web, can you tell us your backstory, please, and how you got started in online marketing?
Yeah, sure. It depends on how far you want me to go back. So I guess it started for me a long time ago. I've always had a bit of an interest in online marketing and I guess the internet as a whole. Back when I was 12 years old, which is about 17, 18 years ago now, I ran like a GeoCities website. I'm not sure if you're familiar with GeoCities at all.
Yeah, I know it.
Basically, it was just the only way you could create websites with no technical knowledge back then. And I was running like an online community of about 40 or 50 people back then. It was kind of like around a bit nerdy. I used to love the WWF, actually, back when it was called the WWF, the Wrestling Federation.
Oh, what, Hulk Hogan and all that?
Yeah, Hulk Hogan and all that. Yeah, that one. So I was running a community of 40 or 50 people doing that, and like I'd created the website myself and stuff like that. So that was kind of my beginning into the online world. And then I studied marketing at university here in Sydney and also in San Diego in the States. And from there, just started to do a bit of work in content marketing, specifically blogging in the management consulting and leadership space for someone. And from there, in 2014, I started Blogger Sidekick, which is my business, and just started to see some really cool results in terms of traffic and engagement and stuff like that from everything I'd learned over the years. And people started to want that for themselves. So I found a way to try and monetize that in terms of selling courses and also offering services. That's how I got here.
Well, we'll go on and talk about your course later on because I was looking at it. It looks absolutely fantastic. But jumping back into an overview of what you call the SEO Spiders Web, let's have a look at what it is, how it can help us. And I understand it contains 4 key elements. You've got your Basecamp, your content anchors, blog posts, and backlinks. So give us a helicopter view of the system.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to mention at this stage that the SEO Spiders Web is only one part of an effective content marketing strategy. So within content marketing, I view content marketing holistically in terms of creating content based on, the right type of content your audience would be interested in. Then the other 3 components are promoting that content effectively to get people to see that, converting them onto your email list or into a call of some description, and then converting them into a customer. So I look at it holistically like that, and the SEO Spiders Web sits in that creation part. So it's the very first part of the strategy and all that kind of stuff to understand it. But for it to be effective, you really need to look at it as one part of a bigger thing, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So to give a helicopter view, an overview of how it works, is it's essentially like the architecture of your website from a content perspective. So you've got these content anchors, which are, the pillars of your website. They're kind of like the blog categories that you would choose as well. It's better to have you have somewhere between 3 and 8 of these, depending on how complex your organization is and how many problems you solve for your customers. And the idea is that you've got the anchors are like the things that you want to be known for, or the real core problems that your customers face and they're searching for in search engines. And those anchors form the outer structure of the spider web. And then in the middle, you have what I call the Basecamp. The Basecamp is essentially like the center. It's like the navigation center of your website. So Perry Belcher calls it a fishbone, which is another way to call it. But it could really be, the most common way you would see a Basecamp on a website is like a Start Here page, where it's the first place that people go to when they come to your website, and it helps them navigate to all the most important pages on that website.
What's the difference between your Basecamp in that context then and your homepage?
Okay, so I think the homepage serves a different purpose, and it depends. Again, it's going to depend on what your goals are as a business and how you want to set that up. There's a number of different ways you could set up your homepage. I like to use the homepage as a kind of a very brief pitch on exactly who you are and what your business does. So, who you are, why that matters, that kind of thing. It's probably better to optimize your homepage to educate someone about the business and then give them a quick chance to either opt in or navigate somewhere else. And you may have, for example, your homepage may actually link to your Start Here page or your Basecamp or whatever you call it. The core difference is that when people come to your homepage, they're probably not as far along the journey as they would be when they're ready to read your Start Here page. So it's almost like a step along that journey for a new customer or a new prospect.
Okay. And then the other two elements, blog posts and backlinks?
Yeah, so the blog posts, obviously, they just they stem from these core anchor topics. So as I said before, they're kind of like the categories on your blog as well, these anchor topics, and the blog posts all stem from them. So if you've got one anchor post which is about, content marketing promotion, for example, then you would have all of your other blog posts which in some way informed people about how to promote their content would link back into that core anchor and be, housed under the same category on your website. And the backlinks are just, you've got two types of links actually in the Spiders Web. You've got internal links, which are the things which are the hyperlinks on your website, which are kind of joining all of your content together and helping people navigate. And then you have the backlinks, which come from other websites. And the goal is to get, authoritative backlinks, so like credible websites linking or hyperlinking back to your content anchors, especially because the content anchors have usually been optimized to try to target like a high volume search keyword within Google. And backlinks are one of the most important factors. So backlinks from credible websites are one of the most important factors in terms of ranking your content in Google. Okay,
so to look at an example of this, I've got an about page, which is really my Basecamp in this context on Content Champion. And I outline, the processes, how I work and everything and my philosophy behind things. And then I've got as well this huge content marketing glossary, which is like, 15,000 words or something ridiculous. So I could go from my sort of process page, my Basecamp, link out to one of those content anchors, that being my glossary. And then each individual definition in that glossary, I could then expand out to its own individual blog post, which then interlink. And then I could build my backlinks into that glossary so that it all sort of creates that web you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. That's exactly the meaning that I've got in my head. So you've done well to replay that to me.
Okay, so that really makes sense because it creates a sort of ecosystem on the page, because it's hard to build good quality backlinks from other sites into yours to every single piece of content you do. But if you've, as you say, picked those 3 to 8 core pieces of content that you're really proud of, it's much easier and people are much more willing to share and link back.
Yeah, and I think that's it. But it's also, once the site is more established, obviously it becomes a little bit easier to get organic links and you may be getting more links to those smaller posts as well. But when you're first starting, or even if you haven't really made a huge splash in terms of search traffic and online as of yet, it's a great way to approach it initially, because you can really focus in on the core things that you want to get traffic for, and you almost build the back of your business or your website on those core things.
Okay, so on your blog, Blogger Sidekick, you outline a 6-step blueprint for creating one of these SEO Spiders webs. So I'll outline the 6 steps you go through, and then we'll talk about each one individually. You've got picking our anchor keywords, creating our anchors, setting up our Basecamp, aligning our content strategy to those anchors, spinning our web with internal linking, and then strengthening our web with external backlinks. So let's start at the top, Run us through picking our anchor keywords.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're picking your keywords, or I guess the topics that you're going to cover in your content anchors, you want to try and brainstorm, as I said before, somewhere between 3 and 8 topics. I mean, I've just pulled that number out of the air. It doesn't have to be that many. It depends on how many topics are really, really important to your site. But what you're looking for is what I call content opportunities. So the way you'll find the topics or the keywords is to ask yourself, what are the 5 or 6 core topics that you really would like to be known for in the marketplace? And what are the 5 or 6 core problems that you can solve for your audience or your customers? And they may be looking for solutions to that problem. So you're really trying to understand, what those big money-making, I guess, or not necessarily money-making, but those really important topics are. And the reason I call them content opportunities is because you want to try and do some keyword research to find an opportunity to be able to rank in search engines. So because there's so much content out there and there's so many people competing these days with blog posts and all sorts of really, really good content, it is a lot harder to rank your content in search engines. So the way I define a content opportunity is to have a look at the search volume. If there's an adequate amount of search volume, then it's a good thing. You obviously don't want to create a really big resource on something that you're trying to rank for, which doesn't have any search volume. The other 2 things that I look at for a content opportunity are to see what other content's already out there. So if you're looking to rank a piece of content in Google and you search for that term, even if it has a lot of search volume, if you're competing against the entrepreneurs of the world, like entrepreneur.coms of the world and Huffington Post and, Wikipedia and, a whole bunch of education websites for that term, then you've got next to no chance of making it to page 1. So it may not be worth your time putting in a lot of effort to create that big piece of content. So what you want to try and look for is search terms which have a decent amount of search volume, but the other content or the other articles which are currently ranking for that term are perhaps a little bit underdone. Maybe the articles were created in 2013, 2014, which are ranking, and they're a little bit skinny on the content, and you could really improve them. That's what you're trying to look out for in that respect. And you also want to try and find a topic and an idea, I guess, which has proven to get a lot of engagement. So I use a tool called BuzzSumo, Loz, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with. And basically it tells you, how many people have linked to an article before and how many people have shared that article across social media in the past. So I would literally just, once I'd found that topic, I would search it in Google. I would see what other articles there were, and then I would just take the URLs of those articles and throw them into BuzzSumo and see what type of engagement it was getting, just to try and prove that concept is, the search volume and the social engagement and stuff, that proves that people are interested in the concept. And the other part, the underdone content part, just proves whether or not you'll be able to, outdo the competition on that one.
And the thing is with that is that when we look at creating content that other people have found popular, even if it's in a different strategic context, as in another company's created that content and their goals are different at the end, their end game, what they want to achieve from that content is different. We know that sort of, if you like, at the top end of the funnel, where we're trying to get eyeballs on the page and get people to our blog or to our site, that if we emulate that kind of content, we can achieve the same sort of thing. And then once the traffic has reached our page, we can get them on our email list and get them further down our funnel. That's kind of the thinking behind it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Loz. Like, I guess the core content which I'm talking about from this perspective is probably focusing more so on the top of the funnel. And then, as you said, with the goal of getting those people that you've found at the top onto your email list, so you can push them further down with other content in the future.
Okay, so step 2 of the process is creating those anchors. How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, good question. It's a challenging one. So I guess it depends. We can look at it from 2 angles. We can look at it from an angle of, how you actually physically get the content created, or we can look at it from, what makes a good content anchor, from like what you would put into it. What do you think is a good way to look at it?
I think the best way to do it is how you better the content that's out there within the context of what we've just said, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess there's a few things to consider when you're creating these content anchors, and hoping that they will eventually rank in search engines and get social engagement and all those things. Typically, if you're going to be structuring your whole site around these, they need to be definitive in nature. So I guess there's a lot of people get caught up with word counts and things like that. They say, oh, you need to, create over 2,000 words to rank in Google and stuff. That's a guideline, but I think it's more important to add as much value as you can about that topic within the parameters that you've got. So if you don't feel like 2,000 words is enough, then you would go further than that. And if you feel like it's too much, then you could go less than that, as long as you feel like that you have covered the topic definitively. And there's, people wouldn't need to necessarily navigate to another page to find out the information they need about that topic. That's kind of a good acid test to decide whether you've put enough into it. When it comes to ranking content in Google, there's 3 really important buckets that I look at it. So getting links is one that we spoke about before, which has a big effect on where you rank based on a search term. Having good quality content is another one. And the third piece, which is perhaps becoming the most important from Google's perspective, is user experience. So Google looks at a whole bunch of different things from a user experience perspective to see whether or not they should rank your content. So things like, how long do people stay on your website? Do they bounce off as soon as they land on the page because it's not exactly what they were looking for, and things like that. And the way you can improve your user experience is to have things like, from a technical aspect, you can make sure that your site loads quickly and all that kind of stuff and looks visually nice. But from a content perspective, you can make the content easy to consume. So you can have lots of headings and subheadings, dot points, and you can use spacing between your lines within the actual text of the content. You can use formatting like bolding and italics to draw people's eyes to the most important parts. You can use imagery like screenshots or visuals to really break up the text and keep people engaged for a longer period of time. You can use other types of media like graphics or video, which will keep people on the page for longer. So it's all about thinking about the user and how you can improve their experience on your website and keep them there for longer. And that will not only build trust with them, it will also, tell Google that they've seen that as quality content as well.
And I guess it's important that these anchors are evergreen, aren't they? Because you said, you might be searching BuzzSumo and get something that can be improved upon from a couple of years ago. If that's then your content and it quickly goes out of date, you've done all that work for nothing. So it might be a good idea that you could, easily, within the infrastructure of the content anchor itself, easily be able to update it in future as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great point, Loz. You want to be trying to pick topics which are evergreen in nature. So at least relevant, look into the future and you say, okay, they're at least going to be relevant in 12 or 18 months' time. And of course, we know that we live in a very fast-moving world, especially in online marketing. So the chances that they still will be all relevant in that time are small. But as you said, structure it in a way that allows you to edit it and update it, for 2017, 2018. And what that actually does is, and that's actually another SEO strategy that a lot of people use, they're going back to their older content, which has already kind of got that credibility with Google, and they're updating those pieces of content to a more modern version of that. And what it's doing is it's carrying all the credibility with it, but it's also, Google's kind of considering recency with a lot of their searches as well now to make sure that they're delivering fresh ideas and fresh content to their audience.
Okay. Well, look, that's the first 2 stages. Step 3, I'm interested to know how you set up your Basecamp page.
Yeah, for sure. So this is probably a work in progress for most people, and it's still actually a work in progress for me, to be honest with you. The way the Basecamp works is, in an ideal world, you would structure all of your anchors out from day one, and you would know exactly what the most important pages were going to be moving forward. And on your Basecamp page, you would include links to those in some way. The way that my Basecamp is set up, I've set it up as a Start Here page. And the core purpose of the Start Here page is to educate people about what we believe in as a business, what value we're trying to deliver to people, and where they can access that information. And a part of the journey for them accessing that information is to go to these anchor pieces of content. So one section of that Start Here page is saying, these are our most important pieces of content, and this is where you can access them. So another way to set it up was what I mentioned before, which is Perry Belcher's from Digital Marketer, his fishbone strategy. What that strategy looks like is when you're first when you're starting a new website from scratch, you would do like a really kind of long list post. So let's say, for example, you sell camping equipment, you're an e-commerce store that sells camping equipment. Your Fishbone or your Basecamp page may be the ultimate, list that you need to take on camping or something like that. And then all of the things within that list would be eventually blog posts of your own. But what they do when they first set up the site is to link off to good content on other websites within each of those pieces in the list. And then over time, when they build the content themselves, they go back in and change those things over. So what it does is people land on the page and they're getting a huge amount of value from day one. And over time, it builds the structure of your website from there.
So it's almost like a hybrid About Us page that would be on a traditional site, but you're not focusing on your own company. You're focusing immediately on giving that value, that content value to your readers.
I can see an About Us here page working well as a Basecamp. We're talking about different types of strategies here, and I guess the core purpose of it is to help people navigate the most important parts of your site. So if you take that part forward, on your About Us page, you may, as you said, include a link off to your content marketing post. It was a glossary, content marketing glossary.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
And then you may have, another 4 or 5 really, really important pages that you want people to see on your site. So what I would do in that situation with the Basecamp is I would have the About Us here page, and then I would have those key links on the page which send people to the most important pages. I would also include them in, the welcome email or the first email that you send in your autoresponder sequence. Because what it does is it helps people just get to know who you are, and it educates them and gives them value, but it also helps them building that trust as well.
You're listening to the Content Champion podcast, showcasing the training and tools you need to become a content marketing champion in your online business.
We're back with Will Blunt. We're halfway through, so we've done the first 3. Just before we go on to the second 3 steps of your process, I love all this stuff because, back in the day, obviously, you could just build a few backlinks with anchor text in and rank for anything in the wild west days of the internet. But now you've got what seems like a ton of stuff to do for any business to do. It seems like a lot to do, but when you get everything, in line and do it all properly, like we're talking about, the results are so much better than just ranking a few individual pages for a few keywords. The holistic approach you talked about at the beginning, if you do all this stuff properly, it is really rewarding and it makes you feel better about your own business. And it also makes the customers and readers that come to your website and business online feel better about your brand as well. So it's kind of win-win for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great point. You know what I find as well, because I do this strategy piece with clients as like the first thing we do. And what it does is it actually helps people, as I was doing it for my side as well, it forces you to understand what is most important to your customers and what is most important to you, because you need to make choices. You're not just coming up with random blog topics forever and a day. You're actually structuring it around the most important topics. So it really forces you to make decisions, and it helps you understand exactly what you need to be creating content about rather than what you think should be interesting.
Okay, well that dovetails neatly into stage 4, step 4, aligning our content strategy to those anchors.
Yeah, so I guess with this one, it's really just about coming up with blog topics once you've got those core anchors and categories decided on, and they naturally stem from it. So if I use the camping equipment example, and the camping list I use that as the Fishbone example, but that could also be an anchor depending on what topics you've got as your core anchors within the website. But then from there, for example, you might write blog posts about, the best tents for going on camping, or, how to use this fry pan on your camping trip and all that kind of stuff. And all of those things were in the core list post about what you should take on your camping trip. So the idea, I guess, is the blog post, which is about this SEO strategy exactly, is all about exactly what we're talking about today, Loz, the architecture of it, what it all means, how people can use it. And then all of the blog posts which stem from that core page are things like more specific about how to create content, or specifically for your SEO Spiders Web, or how to build links specifically for those core anchor pages, or what is an anchor? Like how can I go into more depth about that? So what I find as well, by having those, once you've created those anchor pages, it starts to, and a lot of people struggle with coming up with blog topics, but it actually helps that process and gives you some direction as to where you're meant to go with that.
And I noticed as well, just while we're on the content strategy, type of thing, and we're going to go and look on spinning our web with internal linking in a moment, just to back up a bit and look at how we're then driving people from that content into our mailing list, because I know that's part of the overall holistic Spiders Web as well, to get people back into those different parts of the content, different parts of the process as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely important. And I mean, there's a number of different ways you can think about doing that. For a long time, Loz, I used to create unique, like what are called content upgrades for all of my blog posts and all of my content anchors. And what they are is like a very, very tailored and relevant lead magnet or opt-in, PDF opt-in of some description, which was super specific to that actual piece of content. And I found that the conversion rates were extremely good for those things. But what I found more recently and over time is having a whole bunch of different lead magnets for specific blog posts. It doesn't give you as high a quality leads to push them in the right direction in your back-end marketing funnel, I found. So in hindsight, and what I've started to do more deliberately moving forward is to actually, and what I would recommend doing, you could almost create one lead magnet for each of those core anchor pieces, and then have different email sequences which are structured around each of those. So therefore it's not overwhelming, and then you know where you need to focus your energy. And then any of the blog posts which stem from the core anchor pieces, you would offer that lead magnet on that blog post. And a great way to do that is, I mean, there's a number of different ways to deliver it. You can offer click buttons which have pop-ups, or you can even offer pop-ups, or you can just embed forms on the page, whichever software you're using for that. How do you believe is the best way to approach that?
Well, I was just looking as well at the e-commerce sites, because it works for that as well. I totally agree. So you've got your main product categories, the main products that you sell. Then you've got your main blog categories with perhaps a buyer's guide for those anchors. So it might be fridges, and then it might be dishwashers, then it might be washing machines. And then you might have individual blog posts about the best-selling types of fridges and washing machines and dishwashers. But for each of those central categories and those individual products within that category, you can just have the content upgrade as being that main buyer's guide for, the best fridges within that category, if you see what I mean. So it's all in line, and it all goes back to, in that context, the product on an e-commerce page, and it all goes back to, as you say, on a more content-based site where you might be selling services or smaller amounts of products. It all then goes back to the goals and the strategy that you were talking about on a category basis. So I think that's a really good idea, because I was doing all kinds of content upgrades, like PDF downloads and checklists and everything. And if they're specific and you can repurpose them, you get more of a channeled subscriber list. But if they're just, as you say, almost like scattergun, and you end up, I went into my lead pages account about a year ago and had about a zillion content upgrades, with sort of 20 people on that one, 200 people on that one. And then I was thinking, hang on, what am I doing with all these?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the structure behind them that's important, is what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly, it sounds like we had a similar experience.
Okay, so let's move on to step 4. So this is something I've actually struggled with in the past, spinning our web with internal linking. How do you do your internal linking so that it's really effective from an SEO perspective?
Yeah, I guess there's a number of different ways to approach it, but I think there's less of an important. So the way it used to happen, Loz, is you would if you were trying to rank a page for the best fridges in Sydney or London or whatever. You would try to put that exact text, that anchor text, and then you would link back to that page from another page with the exact anchor text and all that kind of stuff. That technically passes on the most juice to the other page, but from what I understand, the way Google is moving, they see that as an unnatural way to link internally and externally on pages, because it's like too obvious, I guess. The approach I would take most of the time is to just be a little bit more user friendly about how you link internally. So, for example, you may do some anchor text links within blog posts, which are the actual words within a sentence which link off to those pages. But then more often than not, I'll also actually do a more obvious link, which is you may also like this blog post about the best fridges in London, and actually write the whole headline and link off to it there. It will still pass on the same kind of signals to Google saying that you're helping people. But the whole goal of the internal linking is to tell Google that you're helping people navigate to the most important pages on your site based on the content that they're reading. So that's what you're trying to achieve. You're not trying to game the system or anything like that. Basically, the idea of it is to say, okay, that's an important page on my website, the best fridges in London. It's going to be an important page to the person that's reading this other blog post. So I'm going to link to that page from this blog post because it gives them an opportunity to go and see that page and get more additional value. That's the kind of high level view of it. And physically how you would actually do it, like when you're writing new blog posts, you just make sure that if it's contextually related to other blog posts, it would be, I guess, if you're writing a blog post which is related to your content anchors, then you would link to the page which is related to. And I guess any other blog posts which are related to that topic as well, as long as it made sense within the content. You don't want to just stuff links in everywhere, if you know what I mean.
And just to clear it up, we're talking about links here that are actually in the body content itself, because you can get, plugins, WordPress plugins, if you're on that platform where, it just suggests thematic, category specific or tag specific posts that are similar. In addition to that, we're talking about actually linking anchor text within the text itself. Yeah,
good point. So we're physically adding hyperlinks within the content, the text of the blog post, Jen.
Okay, right. Final stage, strengthening our web with external backlinks. Obviously, all these steps could be podcasts in themselves, but just give us the rundown of how you're building external backlinks into your anchors.
There's a million different link building strategies, I guess, which people try to use to get quality backlinks. But from this process's perspective, there's 3 groups of people that I would try to target for these anchor pages to try and get them to link to these pages. And one of them we've spoken about already in the podcast, Loz. So when we were talking about finding the actual topics or the content opportunities, as I called them, what we were identifying is whether or not people had shared similar content in the past or whether they had linked to similar content in the past. So what you can do with a tool like BuzzSumo or Moz or Ahrefs or a number of different other SEO tools is you can actually plug an article or a URL into their system and find out exactly who has linked to those articles before. And then what you would do is literally go and try to find out who the author was of those posts. And you would try to build out a big list of people that had linked to similar content in the past. And then you would directly outreach to them in some way, trying to offer them value and then trying to get them to share your post, either to replace the current link or in a future post that they share. And the same concept applies to the other 2 groups I'm talking about. So they're what I call previous linkers. So people that have been proven to link to similar content in the past. The other 2 groups are guest bloggers and people that run weekly or monthly roundup posts. So the reason those other 2 groups are important in this process. So roundup posts is kind of self-explanatory. Essentially, roundup posts are people that collate articles of other people in the industry and share them on a regular or consistent basis. So they're always looking for articles to share. And if you can get your high-quality content anchor in front of them at the right time, then they will hopefully link back to it within their roundup post. Guest bloggers, people that guest blog regularly on high-quality websites, they're always looking for good examples to use in their articles. So if they're within your industry and they're regularly contributing to these high-quality sites, and you can start to nurture them and become, I guess, part of their network and add value to them, and then at the right opportunity, offer them this content anchor. If they've got a guest blog coming up where they're writing for a high authority site or a highly credible site, then they're likely to also include, a mention of your post in there as well. So they're the three groups that I try to target with to get backlinks to the content anchors. People that have proven to link to them in the past, and then I guess people that may potentially link to your article in the future, which are the roundup posts and the guest bloggers.
Well, this is a great system, and something just occurs to me as we're going through it all. So I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball question at you here. Skyscraper technique, moving man method, feature box, SEO Spiders Web. How important is it when you're structuring your content that you uniquely name it, that you make it memorable. You go above and beyond everything we've talked about to give yourself a structure that is memorable and brandable to just your business?
It's a good question, and I think it's a leading question because it's answering itself in a way. The reason I think metaphors and named systems and all that kind of stuff resonate with people more is because they make complex things simple to understand. So what I found when I was creating the SEO Spiders Web concept is I had an idea of what I wanted to create, but I was going through all of these different metaphors trying to figure out what it actually meant and how I could articulate that to people in a way that they would understand. And that's really what a metaphor does, or a concept does. If it's created in the right way, it should make a complex topic a lot simpler and more memorable than it already currently is. For example, if I just sat here and we went through the 6 steps, I don't think people would walk away and truly remember that. But we've sat here and spoken about this Spiders Web concept, and there's an actual visual that backs that up. People are more likely to embed that in their memory and hopefully go and learn more about it or be able to apply it a lot easier, because if it's done its job correctly, then it's helped them actually cut through that clutter of advice and start to understand it a bit better.
No, definitely. Well, I love it because it's I love the visuals that go with it on all the spreadsheets and everything. You can download at Blogger Sidekick as well. There's a load of materials that go with the system, and I just love the way you've set it all out with all the different color coding for all the different sections. And the irony is I love podcasting and audio stuff, but I also love visuals, and then the written stuff, which I've kind of built my career on. I find it more difficult to understand stuff unless it's got all that other stuff going on with it. So it's really effective. So tell us where we can find it, and tell us about your course as well before we go on to the PS question.
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to find out more about the SEO Spiders Web specifically, then you can go to bloggersidekick.com/SEO strategy with a dash in between the SEO and the strategy part. And once you land on that page, you'll be able to find any other content on our website that may be of interest to you. And the way my business is set up is kind of on the back of this strategy and the way it fits in with the content marketing strategy as a whole. So we offer a training course which takes people through the SEO Spiders Web and helps them construct the SEO Spiders Web from start to finish, including coming up with the topics and actually promoting the content at the end and getting backlinks. So that's kind of what our course in summary is, and you can access that on the website as well.
Wait for it, listeners. Here comes the PS question.
Okay, well, this is what I call the PS question. Could you please share one other advanced content marketing tactic that we can use right after the show?
Right after the show. Okay. One more advanced content marketing tactic. So this is probably not something that people can use immediately, but I think it's the most important thing when it comes to effectively content marketing, in my opinion. And that is to systemize everything you possibly can. So I'm not just talking about trying to systemize automating social media or whatever it is. I'm talking about, like, if you're creating a blog post, what are the 20 steps you need to take to actually create that blog post, and what it needs to be done at every single step of the way during that process. Because what I've found is it's extremely hard over time when you have other priorities and you've got life taking over and you've got clients knocking on your door and all sorts of different responsibilities and priorities in your life, to actually maintain a consistent level of content, high quality, and keep people interested and nurture them over a period of time. The only way I've found to be able to do that is to systemize all of my processes as much as possible. And what that allows you to do is you can find ways then to either delegate that to people in your organization. If you don't have people in your organization, you can outsource that to freelancers. And the more granular and specific you can be with each part of that process, the more you can outsource and the more time you get back to focus on the really high impact things that you can do yourself.
Well, that's brilliant. That's a fantastic answer to the PS question. A fantastic call and a really superb system. So I advise everyone to go and check out the SEO Spiders Web on Blogger Sidekick. And yeah, all that remains to say, Will, is thanks very much for coming on. And I wish you every success with everything in future.
Thanks, Loz. It was an absolute pleasure being on, and thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Content Champion podcast, available at contentchampion.com and on iTunes. Until next time, thanks for listening.